Hi, everyone. Welcome to this fifth match in round one of the international debate competition for on reparations. My name is Jermaine Bart, and I'll be the chair adjudicator for this match. And with me on the panel are two distinguished adjudicators. I'll invite them to introduce themselves, beginning with Natalia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Natalia Burton, and I will be one of the wing adjudicators for this match.
All right, thank you very much, Natalia. And let us hear from Jordana, our second adjudicator. All right, thank you so very much. Now let's get to meet our teams. We have in proposition Bishop's High School out of Tobago, yes, Tobago. Both teams, incidentally, are from the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, but Bishop's High School is from the smaller of the two islands, Tobago, and of course they're going up against the team from Trinidad, that's the larger of the two islands, Pleasantville Secondary School there in Trinidad. All right, so let us get to meet our debaters. I'm going to now invite the debaters from Bishop's High School to introduce themselves in the order in which they'll be speaking.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Murray, and as mentioned before, we are from the Bishop's High School, Tobago, the sister island of Trinidad.
My name is Jaheem Ned.
Good afternoon. My name is Tashari Allen. I will be your third speaker.
All right, and do we have the third speaker from Bishop's High School?
Yes, I am the first speaker.
I'm the second speaker.
Third speaker.
Yes, the third speaker. All right, thank you very much, Bishop's High School. And now let us hear introducing themselves, the team from Pleasantville Secondary High School.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tamaya Belgrove. I'm from Pleasantville Secondary, and I'm your first speaker.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kiara Duncan. I'm also from Pleasantville Secondary, and I will be the second speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chloe Garden, and I'll be your third speaker.
All right, thank you so very much, Pleasantville. All right, so this competition, the International Reparations Debate Competition for 2025, we have some sponsors who do want to highlight at this time. So I'm going to now invite Natalia Burton to inform you of our sponsors.
Yes, so we want to give a huge thank you to the following sponsors: the University of the West Indies, MONA, the Caribbean Community, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, the Center for Reparations Research, the Jamaican Association for Debating and Empowerment, the Repair Campaign, the PJ Patterson Institute for Africa-Caribbean Public Advocacy, and the University of Hull.
All right, thank you very much, Natalia. And of course, our motion, the topic that will be guiding this debate is: this House believes that a focus on the past hinders progress for post-colonial states. So again, the motion: this House believes that a focus on the past hinders progress for post-colonial states. At this time, I invite the first speaker from the proposition team, Bishop's High School, to introduce the topic, and rather to introduce the debate by opening with the first speech. Hear.
A good afternoon is extended to the chairman, panel of judges, and the opposition. We all can agree that the system of chattel slavery, one which was dehumanizing in nature, has tremendously shaped the Caribbean's identity, culture, and way of life. The stain of enslavement is still very much present in today's society. This House believes, however, that whilst the past cannot and should not be ignored, we, as post-colonial nations, must strike a balance between seeking justice and creating pathways for future development. As Don Dewsbury stated, letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting. We can't enjoy the present and embrace the future when we are holding on to the past, end quote. Yes, acknowledging the past is crucial in crafting the way forward. Dwelling on it, however, hinders the growth and development of the Caribbean region. Imagine trying to construct a house. If we never move past the foundation, the house remains unfinished. This foundation consists of resilience and resistance among our colonial legacy, the adaptation of the Westminster system, and our people's formation of political parties, such as the People's National Movement in Trinidad and Tobago, to combat a lack of political representation in a post-colonial society. The introduction of a peasantry and the Caribbean Development Bank to facilitate economic growth in the face of economic bondage to the metropolitan nations, and the implementation of bodies such as CARICOM to foster Caribbean integration among our nations. Post-colonial states must learn from history, but focus on the bricks of the future. From the post-emancipation period, 1838, we have had a deep-rooted history of resilience with the formation of the peasantry, in which our ancestors acquired economic independence without the assistance of the colonial empires. Even prior to emancipation, riots, rebellions, and revolutions, the labor riots of the 1930s, and most importantly, the independence movement in the 1960s, and the list goes on of all the countless examples of strides taken by our ancestors to develop the region. In the years subsequent, as Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, stated in her address to the Inter-American National Development Bank, even without the input in resources, she said, that were afforded to other European and Asian states and multilateral bodies, the Caribbean region has done a commendable job in providing for the needs of the people, end quote. Caribbean nations have notable achievements, such as advancements in the education system, strong economic growth, infrastructure development, and sustainable tourism, as seen in Tobago, who has recently rebuilt the A&R Robinson Airport, Guyana, who has boosted their economy through oil reserve, and the Bahamas Islands, who has been named as the Caribbean's leading luxury island due to their significant achievements in tourism. Moreover, we right here in our island of Trinidad and Tobago have excelled on the international platform. We have Nobel Prize winners in the area of literature, V.S. Naipaul, Samuel Selvon. Regionally, Edward Kamal Brathwaite in Barbados, and Derek Walcott from St. Lucia. What about education? Our advancements in the educational spheres, beginning with the work of Dr. Eric Williams, who ensured that Trinidad and Tobago nationals received free primary and secondary education in light of our independence, continues with the introduction of the University of the West Indies, a regionally unifying form of tertiary education implemented across the Caribbean, from Cayville campus in Barbados to Mona campus in Jamaica and St. Augustine in our very own Trinidad. What about our sovereignty? Have you noticed that we are a republic nation? Do you understand what it means to be a republic? Do you understand the value that holds? The core principle of a republic is that the people hold the power. Do we understand that we hold the power today to chart our future? We are as good as any and better than many. Thus, We, as the Caribbean, do not need to rely on the assistance of these unpredictable and unreliable metropolitan nations because, as according to Prime Minister Mia Mottley said, and I quote, "I believe in the capacity of Caribbean people," end quote. We have created and developed bodies such as the formation of the CARICOM in 1973 and the CARICOM Single Market and Economy in 1989. Additionally, the formation of the Caribbean Court of Justice in 2001 as our very own final appellate court. These many achievements are a testament to the fact that we have the countless abilities and skills needed to develop our region. We firmly believe that there is nothing wrong with acknowledging the past and its lasting impact on our culture and history. However, dwelling, the fixation on such hinders our progress that Caribbean nations have already achieved and continue to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech, Madam Prime Minister. I now invite the leader of the opposition from Pleasantville Secondary School to present their arguments. Hear, hear.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Madam Speaker, how is it possible for the government to so-called support development and progress of post-colonial nations, but ironically fail to acknowledge previous injustices that prevented their development? So I beg you to not be fooled by the useless jabberings of the Prime Minister. How can months pass in the progress? I assure you it cannot. From the moment of emancipation, a momentum began building in the Caribbean for correcting this outrage that followed criminal enslavement. Therefore, from the very start, post-colonial nations were put at a major disadvantage because of the aftermath of the transatlantic slave trade. The opposition completely refutes the claim that the past hinders progress for post-colonial nations. Instead, we intend to prove that the past of post-colonial nations has ignited the need for monetary compensation, restitution, and reconciliation in order for them to progress. Firstly, Madam Speaker, bear with me as I connect how the past of post-colonial nations has ignited the need for monetary compensation. In the aftermath of slavery, post-colonial nations were left to build their nations up from inarguably nothing. The colonizers' money did not grow on trees, but the backs of the enslaved. Sir Hilary Beckles, 2013, confirmed that the enslaved were exploited. Not only were the victims of chattel slavery brutalized, beaten, and butchered, all the sugar produced from their hard work was exported and sold for the sole benefit of European economies. It is said that from this sugar harvest in over a century alone, Britain made 500 million pounds, which equals to 2.5 trillion pounds now. Not to turn this parliament into a church, Madam Speaker, but the good book said, by the sweat of your brow, you will eat bread. Where was the bread for the enslaved? I will tell you where, in the homes and on the plates of Europeans. The Europeans caused the cyclic economic cleansing of their colonies. Madam Speaker, they are one C word short of the word crook. Europe drained their economy during slavery and even after slavery. It has been historically proven that the island of Haiti was made to pay reparations to France for the Haitian Revolution in the form of 90 million gold francs. This resulted in an enormous national debt. The Black independent nation had a price to pay for them to obtain international recognition for independence. Again, Madam Speaker, this was for the sole benefit of European economies, and definitely this was not the beneficial for Haiti. In fact, Sir Hilary Beckles in 2013 indicated that the only slave owners were compensated. He continued, the Haitian president at the time, Bertrand Aristide, made an official request in France for reparations of US 21 billion. He said, we are asking for the money that belongs to us. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the past of post-colonial nations has ignited the need for restitution. Restitution refers to cultural items that were confiscated or seized by colonial looters, and as a result, post-colonial nations have lost artifacts culturally significant to their country. If I can indulge you in the C word again, please. Europeans literally beat the backs of the enslaved and stole their clothes too. Not just their clothes, Madam Speaker, but those crooks even stole their bones. According to Arts News 2023, the remains of 9 indigenous people were unearthed by archaeologists on the small Dutch Caribbean island of St. Eustatius. More than 30 years ago, it is high time Europe returns all of our stolen property. In fact, Jamaica's Culture Minister Olivia Grange in 2019 urged the British Museum to return ancient artifacts stolen during the colonial period, few of which were on display. The opposition echoes this sentiment, Madam Speaker. It is time for our culture, formed on our bruised backs, to come to our museums so we can collect revenue that will benefit our economy. Europe has stolen enough from us. Finally, the past of post-colonial nations has ignited the need for reconciliation. Reconciliation focuses on healing relationships between former colonizers and the colonized. This can be done by promoting dialogue and collective healing across nations with shared colonial histories. While some member nations may have moved on, others continue to feel and suffer from the effects of colonialism. Forgive me, Madam Speaker, if I may speak outside the King's English, but we are asking for a simple hug up and kiss up, and not even that the Europeans are willing to do. Up to this time, Madam Speaker, no formal apology has been given. While some European countries have issued statements of regret, this is not enough because it implies that victims and their descendants are not worthy of an apology. In 2007, then Prime Minister Tony Blair said he felt deep sorrow for Britain's role in these incidents, but he would not apologize. More recently, former British PM Rishi Sunak has refused to apologize for the UK's role in the slave trade or to commit to paying reparations. In conclusion, the opposition completely refutes the claim that the past hinders progress for post-colonial nations. This is because the past of post-colonial nations that has ignited the need for monetary compensation for their drained economies, restitution for their significant cultural items, and reconciliation for the hurt and suffering caused under colonialism. One must know his past in order to create the correct path to his future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We thank the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for her presentation. At this time, the debate moves to its first phase of cross-examination. This segment will see the opposition team asking questions of the proposition team and vice versa. With that in mind, we now invite the opposition team to ask their questions of the proposition team. Of course, your questions are limited to 10 seconds and the response from the opposing team limited to 30 seconds. You may begin now, opposition team.
Yeah, question, sorry. The government said they do not need the assistance of former colonies. However, we would like to ask if they believe the former colonizers should not pay for the historical wrongs. We do not see it as assistive, but yet justice.
Bishop? You may now respond.
Yes, we said that we do not need assistance of European nations because, as I mentioned before in my opening speech, we have made countless achievements by ourselves without the need from any assistance. Why start now? Isn't that a part of becoming an independent nation? And being a republic, as I stated, that we have the power. We do not need to rely on European countries to give us a hand-me-down to help build us into a great region that we can become. The nation, the foundation that I talked about of the Westminster system is what we built on.
Thank you very much. You have utilized your full 30 seconds. we go back now to Pleasantville to invite them rather to ask their second question.
All right. We hear you all boast about all this progress. How would you define this progress?
Our progress is defined by the strides we've made to develop this region out of nothing. The former metropoles left us with a very bare foundation that we've managed to build universal healthcare, multiple instances of free education, and liberating our countries into our independence. What do you define as progress?
What do we define as progress? We
Oh,
define
sorry, hold a second. So we are now entertaining a final question from Pleasantville to Bishops. So Pleasantville, you may ask your final question.
my final question is, personally, within you, if you know that your past had key aspects that would help your future, would you just ignore it?
We have stated previously that we are not ignoring our past. We are building, we are going back to fetch the lessons that we have learned in our past to better ourselves today. So we have been doing that for years now, as we have previously stated with our multiple achievements. Yes, we had the Westminster system. We learned from that. We built off of the Westminster system. We built off of the Privy Council and we formed the CCJ. We have our own accomplishments in where we took the past and we made it into
Okay,
something
thank you
better.
very much. Your 30 seconds has elapsed. And with that, we now invite questions from Bishops High School posed to Pleasantville Secondary School.
My question is, can we not use the lessons of the past in a meaningful way? Rather than dwelling on them, can't we utilize it to ensure that past mistakes are not repeated?
We understand this, but we are not dwelling on the past, as you would say. We are looking at past actions that has happened to us and how it has left us, our educational system, our economy. That is what we are focusing.
In what ways can the focus on the past be beneficial to the progress of post-colonial nations, though?
Focusing on the past, we could understand the reason for why our economy is the way it is today. Okay? Compared to our European counterparts, we are underdeveloped. So focusing on the past is just giving an explanation as to why we are this way.
In what ways are we underdeveloped? By whose definition do you consider us as a post-colonial nation and region to be underdeveloped? Is it that of a Eurocentric definition?
If we compare the educational system of Europeans to Trinidadians' educational system, we can see the major difference.
Okay, thank you very much for that period of cross-examination. Our debate now continues, this time with the presentation from the second proposition speaker. That's the Deputy Prime Minister coming to us from Bishops High School.
Building upon our earlier discussion, it becomes evident that while our history shapes us, it is our present actions and future aspirations that define the trajectory to the development in our region. A strong focus on our colonial past brings the danger of perpetual retrospection, which has the potential to cultivate a victim mindset, an ideology of dependency on metropolitan states. To focus means to direct all energy towards a singular goal, useful from the past. However, fetching is a selective act, not a fixation. Though it's important to acknowledge our colonial past, it is dangerously unwise to emphasize the negative effects of colonialism without looking for our own practical solutions for overcoming these challenges, as it perpetuates a sense of helplessness, and we are far from helpless. The CARICOM 10-point plan for reparatory justice seeks to allocate funds in mitigating non-communicable diseases such as hypertension and type 2 diabetes. While it's true that this would be a major milestone for the region, why must we beg to achieve this? Don't we have the tools to do this already? Let's look at Cuba. Former Cuban leader Fidel Castro prioritized healthcare, implementing policies to ensure effective reform within the institution. The establishment of strong systems of care and the insurance that medical education was free for those meeting academic qualifications was essential in improving health outcomes. And those are just a few of many policies he was able to implement. Cuba successfully established a globally renowned healthcare system, thus emphasizing the lack of need for support from former metropoles. Cuba's accomplishment with regards to healthcare should act as not only an inspiration, but a blueprint for our brothers and sisters across the region to initiate institutional change. Not only this, we as Caribbean nations, through development, can assist each other rather than begging for reparations. Through Cuba's Henry Reeve Brigade and other medical programs, they were able to send thousands of doctors and nurses across the region, providing essential healthcare services where local systems fell short. For example, the aid Cuba provided to Trinidad and Tobago in their efforts towards combating the COVID-19 pandemic. To further note, our dependency has left us grappling with arbitrary and unjust decisions made by metropolitan nations. Just last week, the immigration barrister of the United Kingdom, our friendly Commonwealth nation, announced that all nationals of Trinidad and Tobago must now pay exorbitant prices to obtain a standard visitor visa before entry, portraying exactly what the British think of us. To quote the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, they think we are standard, we are inferior, end quote. Isn't it ironic that our final appellate court is located in London, and now we have to pay more than we already do to get our cases heard? By holding on to the Privy Council and not embracing the Caribbean Court of Justice, we trap ourselves in a mindset of fueled by a lack of cultural confidence. Do we not feel like beggars when we go and plead to a former metropole that has already said that they will give us nothing? Evidenced by the former Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson. I quote, "It would be wrong to divert funding from present-day needs to address historical wrongs," end quote. The fact that this can be the diplomatic response to the call of reparations means that we must sever all ties and cease supplication for what they will not give us and what we do not need from them. We have put ourselves at tables with countries and have negotiated our plans for our future. Instead of begging for acknowledgement, let's continue to chart our way to self-sufficiency by learning from each other. Let's use Jamaica as an example. They have inarguably made significant strides in their music and cultural industry, having reggae be at the top 10 favorite music genres listened to around the world. Barbados themselves focused on enhancing investment into sustainable tourism and developing new sectors such as renewable energy, which help to build more resilient economies and improve their standard of living. The colonial legacy has impacted the way in which these social issues present have shaped the Caribbean region. It is imperative, however, that we indulge in healthy acknowledgement. Else, we risk finding ourselves in a state of paralysis, where political rhetoric about the past injustices overshadow the need for forward-looking approaches. This involves understanding our history in order to inform present actions. It should not stagnate growth. Open dialogue about the past can and should indeed foster critical thinking and innovation, but it must be be balanced with a focus on actionable steps towards creating a more equitable society. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the second speaker from Team Bishop High School out of Tobago. And of course, we now make welcome the Deputy Leader of the Opposition coming to us from Pleasantville Secondary School out of the island of Trinidad. Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, my colleague in the opposition expounded on how post-colonial nations should never overlook their past. I stand here today, not to bore you with what has been said before, but to reiterate that before post-colonial nations can advance, they require pre-colonial legacy understanding as a fundamental guiding principle. Therefore, fixating on past experiences helps post-colonial nations revive culture, build resilience, and correct historical injustice in order for them to progress. Firstly, let us dive into how fixating on past experiences helps post-colonial nations revive culture. Cultural retrieval deals with restoring previous customs, and these histories will provide nations with the ability to retake their cultural legacy and reinstate their national pride as well as their unique cultural heritage. Imagine, Madam Speaker, your mother has taught you how to eat your food using your fingers. No knife, no fork, and no spoon. For years, you have done this. You have developed techniques surrounding this method, and you have passed this practice on to your children. What if one day, Madam Speaker, you were banned from eating with just your fingers, and you were told that it was deemed uncivilized, and in order to civilize you, you are taught to use a fork, a spoon, and a knife. All were new customs that made you forget and or hate what you were doing before. I have only two words for you, Madam Speaker: cultural erasure. The European giants during colonial times forced foreign systems and values on indigenous and enslaved communities, creating new cultural norms for people who have had their own for many centuries. These structures installed by colonial powers mainly work for colonial benefit rather than benefiting colonized peoples. Therefore, post-colonial nations can only forge forward after assessing and accepting their profound social massacre and then retrieve the culture that was confiscated or erased from them. In fact, Madam Speaker, Sir Hilary Beckles' 2013 highlighted that cultural erasure has deeply impacted indigenous people, removing their languages, traditions, and beliefs. Europeans imposed their own cultures and tried to erase those of the native people. This was also evident with the Africans through the process of seasoning. Secondly, let us discuss how fixating on past experiences helps post-colonial nations build resilience. Post-colonial nations which face their historical experiences can build back their power base and restore their cultural heritage while beginning to mend. The Moyne Commission of 1938 represents an essential historical event that displays how nations move through this process. The Commission revealed fundamental social and economic problems within the colonial system because the native people faced vast poverty together with minimal opportunities and denied voting rights. The Moyne Commission findings exposed the complete extent of colonial suffering, which became a vital moment that made Caribbean populations aware of their chronically unjust mistreatment. Lastly, let us explore how fixating on past experiences helps post-colonial nations correct historical injustices. According to the Akan African concept of Sankofa, one must look back into the past to recover what is in danger of being forgotten or left behind, to avoid repeated mistakes in order to move forward and create a future. OSA 2023. Retrospective language learning. Retrospective learning is one approach in which focusing on the past helps post-colonial nations progress. Retrospective learning emphasizes learning by looking back at past events, learning from mistakes, not repeating errors. Therefore, the key element for advancement is learning vital lessons from former historical errors. The deficiencies from former societies regarding governance, economics, and social organization provide essential knowledge about what to exclude. Government should use indigenous knowledge bases to develop their own policies which fit their people's needs better than imported foreign policies do. Once again, Madam Speaker, fixating on past experiences helps post-colonial nations revive culture and put a stop to cultural erasure. Build resilience by rebuilding their power base and cultural heritage, and correct historical injustice through retrospective learning. Post-colonial nations can build a better, more sustainable future by simply turning around and acknowledging their past. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech, Madam Deputy Leader of the Opposition. We now enter a second phase of cross-examination, and as was the case in the first instant, we're going to invite the opposition team, that's Pleasantville, to ask questions of the proposition team first, followed by the proposition team asking questions of the opposition team. Please be reminded that a question is limited to 10 seconds and a response limited to 30 seconds. Pleasantville, you may ask your first question now.
Don't you agree that the Caribbean should be compensated since enslaved persons never received compensation?
Yes, we do agree that we require compensation. However, the problem at hand is the fixation on the past ills that are, quite frankly, affecting our society today by just dwelling on something that is not pertinent to the present. We have in the past made significant strides in certain industries, and quite frankly, there's no need for us to
Thank you very much for that response. We now go to Pleasantville for their second question.
Do you know because of focus on the past, we were able to call for and have the CCJ?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Do you know because of focus on the past, we were able to call for and have the CCJ?
As mentioned before in the first opening speech, it's because we looked back using the method of fetching from the past that we were able to build on the foundation laid of the Privy Council, not by dwelling on the past. If we dwelt on the past, as mentioned in the second speech, countries like Trinidad and Tobago continue to use the Privy Council. The CCJ is a testament that we fetched from the past and built upon it, using our own culture and identity to foster something new for us.
Okay, you may proceed to ask the third question.
Thank you very much. And now I invite the third question from the opposition side.
How do you suggest we can tap into receiving these compensations if we don't focus or highlight the past?
Could you repeat the question, please?
How do you suggest we can tap into receiving these compensations if we don't focus and highlight the past?
meant to tap into these compensations. Yes, we do agree that we should be compensated, but the point that we made earlier in our second speech stated that we are not beggars. We are not going to be begging for anything from them that they will not readily give us.
it's already been outright stated by Boris Johnson that they're not going to give us reparatory justice in the form of monetary compensation. It is up to us to find our own way to move forward with development in the region.
Excuse, that is not what we asked.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that segment of question and answers. We continue though, this time with the questions coming from Bishop's High School. And those questions are posed to the opposition team.
So the first question we have is, how does moving on and growing erase culture?
Can you repeat that?
How does moving on and growing erase culture?
We never said moving on and growing erases our culture. We said that if we do not focus on what has happened and how certain cultural artifacts were stolen from us, we wouldn't be able to move on.
The next question we have, is it not the mixing and retention of cultures within the region that has attributed to our growing development and success on the global stage?
Yes, that's one.
Sorry?
Yes, it's one. However, we need to focus on the past.
Opposition, can you help me to understand this a bit for me? Because I'm a bit confused. In your opening speech, you started off arguing that we need to fix on the past. However, in one of the questions in the cross-examination, you said acknowledging the past. Then now you said that you are focusing on the past. Which one is it? Is it focusing or is it acknowledging? Because we suggested that we are acknowledging the past.
We are also acknowledging the past. However, we do not just seem to bypass these things and say it's begging. We can't beg for something that is rightfully ours, right? We are not focusing, we are acknowledging and moving on.
Thank you.
Bishop High School, do you have another question?
Yes, we do have another question. Our question to you, sorry, is, do we not already know our own history? Don't we already have subjects like Caribbean studies, Caribbean history, sociology, and others down the line that help us to remember our culture and our history and ourselves?
Yes, but we need to keep the past alive, right? When Europeans have our culture artifacts, they are telling our story from their perspective. To have our artifacts, it will be us telling our own story.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to both teams for that lively and informative exchange of questions and answers. We're now going to pause the debate for 1 minute, and at the end of the 1 minute pause, we will resume with the reply speech from the opposition team, followed by that from the proposition team. Your 1 minute begins now. Andre, may we resume? Okay. Okay, so we have just utilized the 1 minute pause and we're now ready to conclude our debate, this time with the presentation first from the opposition team, that's Pleasantville Secondary School out of Trinidad. And we now make welcome that third speaker who will conclude the case on behalf of the team. Let's make that speaker welcome. Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, distinguished members of the House, esteemed colleagues, the hands of the empire may have long receded, but the wounds they inflicted on the lands and the people they colonized remain fresh. Colonialism is not a forgotten chapter of history. Its legacies live on, inscribed in the wealth of nation and the poverty of others. Madam Speaker, which other nations have continued to bleed from their scars? Indeed, the post-colonial nations, in fact. These scars of colonialism are not just physical, but also psychological, cultural, and institutional. Though the flags of colonial powers have long been lowered, their imprint on the people, the land, and the systems that govern these post-colonial nations remains undeniably present. Post-colonial nations to focus on the past in order to confront their lasting colonial impacts, reclaim their identity, and learn from historical errors to achieve progress. Post-colonial nations need to focus on the past in order to confront the lasting colonial impacts. Reparations are not mere gestures of charity or compensation. They are a necessary step towards the restoration of dignity, the acknowledgement of systematic wrongs, and a commitment to addressing persistent inequalities that continue to define the post-colonial experience. As Walter Rodney famously stated, colonialism was not only the theft of land, it was a theft of human potential. This stolen potential, this robbed future is at the heart of the case for reparations. It is the loss that must be acknowledged, restored, and rectified. Beyond material theft, post-colonial nations need to focus on the past in order to reclaim their identity. The cultures, languages, and beliefs of the colonized were systematically suppressed, replaced by foreign values and systems. In the Caribbean, the effects of this cultural erasure are profound. Languages were displaced by European tongues, religions, traditions, and practices were either erased or forced to conform to European ideals. The struggle for identity in post-colonial nations is ongoing as people seek to reclaim what was lost. The movement to recognize the importance of African roots, for instance, has been gaining strength throughout the Caribbean. In Haiti, the most prominent example of slave rebellion, there is a profound effort to reconnect with African heritage despite centuries of being denied that connection. In Jamaica, the reggae music and the Rastafari movement represents attempts to embrace the rich African cultural heritage that was stripped away during slavery. Lastly, post-colonial nations need to focus on the past in order to learn from historical errors. Reparations are not about compensation. They are a reflection, a commitment to ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. Reparations are necessary to correct these historical roles, to break chains of colonialism that still bind nations to their exploitative past. More importantly, reparations provide an opportunity for post-colonial nations to rewrite their own stories, to move forward with the full acknowledgement of their history and recognition of their inherent values. In conclusion, post-colonial nations to focus on the past in order to confront colonial legacies, past hurts, reclaim their identity, particularly cultural practices, artifacts, and norms, and learn from historical errors in order to never repeat them. Reparations are not a magical fix for the wounds of history. They are a necessary step toward healing. This is not a call to dwell in victimhood or sorrow, but rather to confront these injustices of the past, not with vengeance, but with the desire for healing, acknowledgement, and ultimately restoration. Thank you.
We thank the third speaker from Team Opposition. Again, the school being represented here is Pleasantville Secondary School from Trinidad. And now, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, to conclude our debate, we welcome the third speaker from the Proposition team. That is the team, Bishop High School out of Tobago. Let's make that speaker welcome. Hear, hear.
Honorable judges, members of the opposition, teammates, and viewers, presents this statement that focus on past grievances will hinder development. As our previous arguments prove, the focus of post-colonial nations should be that of the Sankofa, going back and fetching the lessons of the past, but not dwelling on them, or, as our opposition said, fixating on them. In the effort of our nations to address and seek justice for challenges that demands our entire attention to combat. Challenges that, yes, place us at a disadvantage due to our colonial past, but has been exacerbated by contemporary issues. Emphasis should be placed on alleviating and making efforts towards negating these ills, thus developing our region, which requires forward-thinking solutions and not on the theft of our artifacts when we already know our history. Caribbean nations, like our very own Trinidad and Tobago, have more pressing issues to focus on. When we examine the critical issue confronting our daily life, despite our numerous accomplishments, we can all point to issues such as government corruption, mismanagement of resources by local governments, and crime. Note that these problems are not necessarily rooted in colonial injustices. When we are fixated on repayment, these issues are left to linger. Focusing on the past hinders our progress on addressing issues like crime, as seen in Trinidad and Tobago, where a nationwide state of emergency was declared by the government on December 30th, 2024, based on the continued criminal activity and the country's 2024 deadliest record with 625 murders, 43% of which were related to gang activity. Not to mention the facilitator of crime in the form of our porous borders, where drug trafficking is allowed to freely pass, as shown in the 2005 incident, where 700 million TT dollars of cocaine was seized on the coast of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a testament to the fact that there's work to be done in post-colonial nations that commands immediate action and attention to enact change in present-day society. To quote, "We have moved, my friends, from beyond a tenuous toddler, a moody teenager, where we are dependent on others for basic needs. We are not victims of our past circumstances, nor are we passive onlookers of current ills we undergo. We determine our path to development without reparations because we have always done so. Reparations, while important, should not be placed as a priority, distracting from the development process of the region. Constantly fighting for reparations without addressing present-day issues can lead to a sense of stagnation, keeping society stuck in an endless cycle rather than fostering growth and unity for future generations. As the famous Robert Nesta Marley posited, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, because what does it profit a man to gain the world and lose the soul? What does it profit post-colonial nations to gain reluctantly given reparations when we lose our integrity and our identity as self-resilient people? How does reparations fix our dignity, fix our identity? We can, like the Sankofa, go back and fetch, but never linger, lest we lose ourselves in past grievances and forget the gift of the present that allows us to develop for the future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We thank the third speaker from Bishop's High School. They're concluding our debate. And this time, we as adjudicators, we leave to deliberate and give some thought to the arguments we've heard so far, after which we will return with the results. Thank you so very much.
Is defined as a compensation paid by a defeated state to another. However, to us, reparation is more than a mere monetary compensation. It's the acknowledgement of the hardships faced by the formerly enslaved Africans.
Reparations assist in the removal of the ideology of Black inferiority, contesting the second-class status ascribed to us due to centuries of discrimination and ridicule.
Since this topic is rarely discussed, our school would be grateful to have the opportunity to debate and shed light on the importance of reparations.
Slavery occurred too many years ago to adjudicate now. Overruled defense is correct. Same was legal. Your Honor, descendants of the victims of chattel enslavement seek reparation for the crimes committed against them. Abu Onye Titeri na Ohu Africa. Naturally sure. I am Kira Duncan. I am Chloe Duncan. And we are students of Pleasantville Secondary School. And we deserve to be chosen because of our passion to fight for our Caribbeans while we seek reparation.
The Center for Reparation Research is thrilled to launch this international reparation debate competition. This international reparation debate competition that we launched today for secondary schools is one of our most important projects. How do we engage youth on matters of reparatory justice? The change needed in the education system can only be advanced when the youth are engaged and their voices are heard.
Why is reparations so important in and for the Caribbean? Because time comes for justice for our ancestors. Time comes for the Caribbean to insist on the right to development, to be compensated for the violence against our ancestors. So outreach to the young people who have joined this movement is critical.
And this initiative is phenomenal. And you know why? Because it's engaging with young people. And it's young people that I believe, are going to be the future of the reparatory justice movement. The greatest weapon that there is in this whole fight for reparatory justice is the young people of today. I hope this debate spurs a whole new generation of advocates for reparatory justice, and the UK and the EU have got to make amends for the ills of the transatlantic slavery. This is going to be a phenomenal competition.
There is no mass movement that isn't a youth movement. And we certainly want reparations to be a mass movement. So it's really exciting, though, to have a regional / international debating competition. And I'm looking forward to your participation as you construct your arguments for and against, remembering that the 10-point plan for reparatory justice is our guiding framework for the areas in which we are demanding compensation, because we certainly want to impact the public opinion and awareness in Europe. So it's fantastic to have the United Kingdom participating as well.
So why is it important for youth to be involved in the reparation movement? Being involved in the reparations movement is critical to youth if one is to know their history so that they can understand why their societies are functioning as they are today. The future of the countries we live in are dependent on the current situation that exists today in our countries. And these current conditions were created by the past, including indigenous genocide, African enslavement, indentureship, and colonization. Being involved in reparations is about seeking justice, seeking a way to reduce inequalities in our own countries and then in the broader world. It's about seeking a more peaceful and balanced world, where global problems are solved in partnerships, not in isolation. I believe the sponsors are hoping this competition will allow our youth to gain knowledge about the past so that as young people, you'll be able to make better decisions in the future and make our countries better places.
We know that we need to understand stories about people that look like us. So the fact that so many of you young people have registered was so encouraged by your enthusiasm and your passion for wanting to enter this debate. It is so important. It's just at the core of who we are, that we need to understand where we come from, understand our true history, and having a debate competition on this particular topic is such an important milestone. To have a real conversation about repair, and the fact that our young people were so articulate with their presentations, and to ensure that we keep educating our young people, because you are the future of us and are the Caribbean's a sustainable future. So congratulations, everybody.
We are looking forward to the debate. Encourage everyone to join the debate. Thank you so much, all.
Where is the justice for the 5 million enslaved Africans trafficked to the Caribbean? Think about it. Chattel slavery didn't just end, it left deep, painful scars across each Caribbean country. The deliberate underdevelopment, the brutal trauma and violence we inherited. It's time to repair this damage so we can build thriving, sustainable economies where young people like us can dream big, achieve more, and live better lives right here in our own home. Do you see why repair matters? Stand with us, join the calls for justice, and sign the petition for reparations at repaircampaign.org/petition.
It's very important that this is understood, because we can't talk about legacies before talking about what left those legacies on our landscape. Enslaved Africans were subjected to the worst atrocities imaginable: kidnapping, storage in filthy barracoons, the Middle Passage, forced drowning as in the case of the slaver Zong, branding with hot iron, including by the church, with SPG being seared into the flesh of those they owned, unrelenting field and factory labor, legal codes that rendered them non-human, and harsh punishments when they resisted enslavement, deportation, dismemberment, hanging, imprisonment, severe flogging, including of women and children. According to Lucille Matherin Mayer, and I quote, "Neither age nor pregnancy exempted women from corporal punishment. Rather, they were laid down in the filthiest place the driver could find for floggings. Child labor was rampant, and women and girls faced sexual violence." Orlando Patterson wrote in his Sociology of Slavery the following: "The sexual exploitation of female slaves by white men was the most disgraceful aspect of Jamaican slave society." Unfortunately, the church was complicit in this crime against humanity. Initially, Christian planters did not think that the African was of theological significance. According to Elsa Gavaya, and I quote, "Early English slave law almost totally neglected the enslaved as a subject for religious instruction, as a member of a family, or as a member of society possessing some rights, as the same rights as everyone else."
Did you grow up on Anansi stories? Yep, most of us have. But did you know that Anansi played a major role in our ancestors' survival? So let's talk about it. He's more than just a trickster spider. He was a means of inspiration for resistance.
Anansi's cleverness in outsmarting his rivals mirrored tactics enslaved people used in their daily lives. By pretending to be foolish or inept, a technique known as play fool for catch wise, enslaved people lowered their enslavers' expectations and reduced suspicion. These methods, inspired by Anansi, are known as Anansi tactics, or in Twi from Ghana, Anansi Sem. Anansi outwitted powerful animals and even white enslavers using cunning and wit. During the plantation era, Anansi tales were shared in enslaved quarters and sometimes in front of European enslavers. These stories, recorded in journals, reveal how enslaved people used public performances to mask hidden defiance. Plantation whites often missed the rebellious messages in these tales. Caribbean Anansi stories depict him evading punishment, tricking enslavers, and a whole plethora of adventures which highlight the resistance and survival through Anansi tactics.
400 years ago, my people were dragged from their homes, tribes, families, placed on floating wood, and shipped across the Atlantic to what would be later described as the most inhumane act of all time. Cold, dark, uncomfortable, cannot describe the trip in ships where whips did not fail to miss. Injustice, rape and disgrace, blood rains, brute, force, ignorance, hate in their veins. Sweat and tears, labor revealed, produce from king fields only for the esteemed. 400 years of eroding one's pride, culture, heritage, value. 400 years of the iron chain, stringing up, leaving bare. Oh, but they never cared. Why fight when you would be met with sharp blades? So don't you dare cry out in fear. Why not plan escape with the plaiting of one's hair? Oh, the drums, listen, dance, communicate. For tonight we fight a battle not even death could spare. Blue eyes, white skin, master said that's beauty within. But guess what? Black, brown, gold, royalty, reparations we are owed. Them say hassa, but we say cassava. That's where we get the strength from to beat and conquer. For tonight we're returning to Ghana. You may say, I'm a descendant of slaves because of the rich melanin that gushes from my pores. But I came to tell you tonight, I am not a slave, rather the descendant of kings and queens. I am the embodiment of the divine. I do not chase, I align, I attract. What's meant for me already has my name on it. I am the personification of beauty, the expression of love, the creator of life, the acknowledgement of freedom. So go ahead, call me what you want, because when I die, bury me in the oceans where my ancestors jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
And here's what does need reparative justice. It is the seasoning period when we landed on the soil and they took away our names and our gods and our culture, and no slave system that we understand thus far has ever had that deculturalization process embedded in the process of our enslavement. So our enslavement was not just physical, it was not just culture, it was spiritual, because you took me away from everything. Who then must I look up to? Who then must I emulate? Who then must I kill myself in order to elevate you?
What is common about the wealth? A flag raises high, but the strings still pull from London. We sing our anthems in borrowed tongues, march to the beat of siphons' drums, celebrating a freedom that still pays tribute. Independent? What is that when the governor's shadow still lingers? They tell us, we free. tell that to the bones at Rapparee. The 196 who fought and won only to drown in chains. Our Negmawan. Do the people of North Devon not hear the howls raging for their home? The tide spits their cries, their names foam in fury, salted by a sea that will not forget. They call us independent, yet a crown still sits above 14 nations, still bent at the knee, still ruled by a throne built from our gold. They took our labor, snatched our names, they welcomed our craft, then cast us adrift. Windrush mothers, fathers, exiled from the empire they built. What is common about the wealth? Our persistent potency that perseveres through acute artistry. We carve language into legacy, turn sorrow into song, drum resistance as rhythm, sink steel into symphony. We are the architects of new worlds, the poets, the painters, the prophets, who make home in remnants still, who forge futures from fractured pasts. They took the wealth, but we are the riches.
And remember that chattel slavery of the African people was also genocide. This is not highlighted sufficiently. If you take my home island of Barbados in the Caribbean, the British brought 600,000 people into Barbados. 600,000 Africans were brought into Barbados. The black population of Barbados today is 280,000. How do you reduce 600,000 to 290,000 after 200 years? They brought 3 million into Jamaica. At the end of the slavery malarkey, there were just about 600,000. The survival rate of African people in the Caribbean was about 17%. It was horrendous.
The Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community.
But I will say to you, therefore, that the issue of reparations for the transatlantic slavery is an issue that we will take up with you, and that the appropriate apology and compensation is paid, and that the international community accepts that this should never happen again.
And yes, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, slavery is a crime against humanity.
The concept of reparations would take the question of development repair, and it would be multi-generational. What needs to happen is face-to-face discussions, which we deem as absolutely important, because if you can't see me or hear me, it is not appropriate to be able to make a judgment as to who or what I am and what I should receive.
Progress also means reparatory justice to heal historical wounds and climate justice to secure our future. We must be bold, demand what is old, and build a Caribbean that thrives.
Reparation Research is thrilled to launch this international reparation debate competition. This international reparation debate competition that we launched today for secondary schools is one of our most important projects. How do we engage youth on matters of reparatory justice? The change needed in the education system can only be advanced when the youth are engaged and their voices are heard.
Why is reparation so important in and for the Caribbean? Because time comes for justice for ancestors. Time comes for the Caribbean to insist on the right to development, to be compensated for the violence against our ancestors. So outreach to the young people who have joined this movement is critical.
And this initiative is phenomenal. And you know why? Because it's engaging with young people. And it's young people that I believe, okay, are going to be the future of the reparatory justice movement. The greatest weapon that there is in this whole fight for reparatory justice is the young people of today. I hope this debate spurs a whole new generation of advocates for reparatory justice, and the UK and the EU have got to make amends for the ills of the transatlantic slavery. This is going to be a phenomenal competition.
There is no mass movement that isn't a youth movement. And we certainly want reparations to be a mass movement. So it's really exciting, though, to have a regional stroke international debating competition. And I'm looking forward to your participation as you construct your arguments for and against, remembering that the 10-point plan for reparatory justice is our guiding framework for the areas in which we are demanding compensation, because we certainly want to impact the public opinion and awareness in Europe. So it's fantastic to have the United Kingdom participating as well.
So why is it important for youth to be involved in the reparation movement? Being involved in the reparations movement is critical to youth if one is to know their history so that they can understand why their societies are functioning as they are today. The future of the countries we live in are dependent on the current situation that exists today in our countries. And these current conditions were created by the past, including indigenous genocide.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the match. Of course, if you're just joining us, you'd have missed the thrilling contest, the contest between Bishop's High School out of Tobago versus Pleasantville Secondary School out of Trinidad, the Trinidad Republic, two teams contesting fiercely the idea as to whether or not a reflective sort of contemplation on the past, whether or not that does greater harm to the progression of Caribbean societies. And, you know, during the deliberation, we had quite an interesting time just weighing the arguments. Ultimately, the team that wins with 274 points to the second place team's 273 points. So there you have it. It's just a 1 point difference between the two teams. That's how close it was. Also reflecting the closeness of the contest, it is not a unanimous decision. So there are three of us as judges. One voted in favor of the team that lost ultimately, and two voted in favor of the team that will advance automatically to round two. And let us assess the major tenet on which there was a contestation in the debate. So we hear from Bishop High School the idea that Caribbean societies have evolved and have developed, but with largely because of our own efforts and our own intuition and our own ingenuity. We have come a far way, and we hear examples from Trinidad, from Barbados. We hear about the Caribbean Court of Justice and all manners of examples, rather, of development. And we really definitely appreciated those examples, right? We hear on the opposition team, that's Team Pleasantville Secondary Schools, stands that the past has been so horrific and horrendous that it would be a great injustice and a great disservice for us not to reflect and possibly even deepen our reflection on the past. And why do they consider that this is worthwhile? What is the utility of a retrospective examination on the past? They say to us that in as much as a demand for reparations is reliant on a kind of a unified, focused attention on the past and its horrors and the ill effects that manifest even to today, that it is that which will secure for us the greatest prospects of attaining reparations. Yes? Now, of course, we hear some contestation on the question about reparations and whether or not it's likely ever to come. Bishops tell us that, well, we have been begging and pleading for some time now. We have almost been embarrassing ourselves because of our desperation for reparations, and we've not gotten very far. They quoted, the famous British Prime Minister who basically said, it's not going to happen. And we've heard that said many times. So we might as well just give up on that and funnel our efforts into our own self-progression or progression by virtue of our own efforts. That's what they say. Importantly, we felt that a lot of the argumentation from bishops was located in the contemporary realities of the Caribbean societies, in the positive domain. The developments are all very much positive. What we didn't get enough of from Bishop is an indication that these developments have been achieved by virtue of us not focusing on the past. In fact, what we get from the opposition team Pleasantville High School, secondary school, is this idea that it is a retrospective look that have propelled us to attain things like, for example, the CCJ. It is because of our reflection on the past and our almost repulsion for the British institution of the Privy Council. It is that which has caused us to create for ourselves the particular institution we call the Caribbean Court of Justice. And so, by that example, and we imagine there are many other examples, we're led to believe that a retrospective look isn't only about reparations and securing and bolstering our stance in favor of reparations, but it is also very much in favor of us determining for ourselves that we will achieve greater things in the future, irrespective of the response of the Europeans, which we felt that that kind of analysis feeds into the characterization of the opposition team, that's Bishop High School, when they tell us that, we need to be doing things for ourselves. We see how it is that we can, in fact, be doing things for ourselves. The second and final point that we reflected on as adjudicators is this question of justice and the attainment of justice. Now, Bishop High School would have us believe that because we are not likely to get justice, because of the adamant position of the Europeans in not giving us justice, reparative justice, then the pursuit of reparative justice is a waste of our time. We felt that it is not that the opposition team is contending that there is a guarantee for reparative justice, but the principle of justice, we felt, is independent of whether or not we actually get it pragmatically. And so we felt that it may very well be justified for us to say, listen, a wrong was done to us, and that justice demands that that wrong be compensated for, even if it is that we don't actually get it. It's still the right thing for us to do. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in the final analysis, in a very closely and keenly contested match, again, the winning team ended on 274 points to the second place teams. We don't have a losing team here. Second place teams, 273 points. The team that advances, and before I announce the advancing team, I'm going to invite both teams to unmute because we want to get some reactions when you're screaming and clapping and cheering. We want to hear from you. The winning team in this match, ladies and gentlemen, is the team from opposition. That's Pleasantville Secondary School out of Trinidad. Hear, hear. Congratulations, Pleasantville Secondary School. All right. So the best debater in the match also comes to us from the first place team, that's Pleasantville Secondary School. And that speaker, that debater, is the first debater on that team. Congratulations to the leader of the opposition. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning into this match. We have lots more in store. The competition is still in its early stages, so please monitor this channel and stay tuned because we have lots more exciting contests to be had between the teams in the Caribbean and our British team as well, who will be contesting for the title of International Reparations Debate Champions 2025. We will have another match coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay tuned and please join us back for that match.
Secondary for participating in this debate with us and giving wonderful answers to our questions. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity again. And we look forward to the next round.